I'm Ryan. This is my brother Daniel, and this is Roles in the Family. Today we are going to be talking about 5 alternatives to the classic game of deduction, Clue.
Yeah, and while these aren't necessarily the games that are most like Clue, they are the games that we most recommend for someone looking for a modern alternative to Clue. And if you feel like we missed any good picks, definitely drop them in the comments below, and you can check out links to all these games in the description. But I'll pass it over to Ryan for our first pick.
Our first recommendation is going to be Cryptid. And this is kind of a pure deduction game where you and the other players are trying to deduce the location of this elusive cryptid creature on the map. At the beginning of the game, you all are going to be given a secret clue that only you know about the location of the cryptid, such as it being within a certain number of spaces of a certain type of terrain on the board. And on your turn, you're going to have the opportunity to either question another player or search. If you question, you're asking that player if the cryptid could be in a specific space based on their clue. And so when they put out a cube saying that, it could be there, that's now information that the whole, everybody playing knows that that is valid for that player. And so as play proceeds, there's more and more information kind of being uncovered on the board, and you're trying to deduce not just the location of the cryptid, but what are the other clues that the players have and how can those fit together so that eventually you can take a search action, which is how you actually win the game by seeing if the cryptid is at a specific location. And we go around the table and have each player mark whether the cryptid could be there. And only if every player says it could be there have you found the correct space. This kind of has the fun feeling of uncovering information and kind of building it up to deduce something that you might find in Clue. But it's also very, very quick playing and more pure deduction. And it kind of has the advantage of everything being open information. So as new information comes out, kind of everybody has access to the information, which can help prevent one player from getting way behind other players. So we definitely think Cryptid is a good one to check out.
Our next recommendation is going to go to Mysterium. Now, this is a cooperative game that's similar to Clue. You're trying as players to solve who the murderer is, the weapon used, and the location of the murder. But the way it's done is pretty interesting. You have one player playing as the ghost. They're literally behind this shield, and they're giving these clues to players, clues in the form of these pictures on cards, and each player at the start of the game is assigned a suspect, a weapon, and a location, and these are all potential solutions to the mystery. And so the ghost is trying to give clues to help players solve the one that's assigned to them at the beginning of the game. As players move through the game, you ultimately get to the end where you want everyone to get to, because it's at the end that you have the final culmination, the final solving of the mystery. And the way this is done is every person's solution of murder, weapon, and location is laid out in front, and the ghost is going to pick one to be the true solution. And the ghost puts out 3 cards, and players are going to look at the clues given by the ghost and vote on which solution they think is the true one. And it's got this exciting moment as you reveal the votes and see, did you get it correct? Mysterium is a really fun game of trying to, as the ghost, communicate, and as players discuss what is the ghost trying to communicate to you, and definitely one worth checking out.
Our third pick is going to be Chronicles of Crime, and this is another cooperative crime-solving game that really makes you feel like a real detective. The game is driven by an app which allows you to scan different things around the table. So you'll be able to scan certain people that you want to talk to, and then once you're talking to them, you can scan any other item, location, or person that you've discovered to ask that person what they think about it. And this creates a very interesting decision space of who do we need to go talk to and what do we need to ask them about to get the information that we need. And that will often uncover new locations that you can go to and ways that the story progresses. And another really cool touch is that at certain points during the game, you'll get to a location that has the option to search the scene. And when you do this, you are actually going to get to look in a 3D environment and look at like the evidence at the scene of the crime. They actually have an option that you can do this in VR if you have the glasses. When we've played it, we've done it on an iPad as like a viewer device so that everybody could see it. And as you're looking at it, you're calling out different things that you see, because if you find those cards in the deck, you can now pull those out and scan them as evidence that's now, in your possession. And you could go back and talk to the criminologist about something, or go ask other people. So it's a very interesting, just crime-solving feel as you go around and do these. The fact that it's powered by the app makes it very dynamic. Sometimes events can come and kind of like interrupt, or things can happen. And it's just all very smooth. It's very easy to play with a group and just scan the things and talk about it and what should we do next. So if you want something that's kind of that group experience for an evening, we're going to try to work together to kind of solve this one-time case, then definitely recommend checking out Chronicles of Crime.
Our next recommendation is going to go to Deception Murder in Hong Kong. Now, this is a game that takes the whole finding the right person, weapon, and evidence, but moves it into a social deduction game. So at the start of the game, every player is given 4 weapon cards in front of them and 4 pieces of evidence. And then everyone is assigned a random role. And in the game, there's going to be 1 murderer and then 1 forensic scientist. And at the start of the game, everyone's going to close their eyes, and the murderer and the forensic scientist are going to open their eyes, and the murderer is going to point to 1 weapon in front of them and 1 piece of evidence in front of them, and that is the solution. And so then they're going to close their eyes again, and everyone's eyes are open. And how the forensic scientist is going to work is they're going to be giving clues to the rest of the players to try to clue them towards that solution. But how they give clues is, again, kind of limited. There's these tiles in the center of the game that kind of are categories that they can use to help point people towards the solution. So, for example, there could be victim's expression, and if the forensic scientist puts frightened, now everyone's going to be looking at all the weapons and all the pieces of evidence and wonder, okay, which one is going to lead towards the forensic scientist saying it would make someone frightened. And so there's all of these different tiles that are going to be the forensic scientist is going to be using to clue them towards the solution. Now, ultimately, every player has 1 chance to solve the case. One time where you can step in and make your solution guess. But this is just a really great game for larger groups that like kind of that clue social deduction. But what's awesome is it doesn't require lying to other players. It's really just looking through the evidence and trying to take what the forensic scientist is cluing you towards to ultimately figure out the solution. Really fun one, and definitely worth checking out.
And our last recommendation is going to be Detective City of Angels. Now, this is a game that is set in kind of 1940s Los Angeles, a very noir crime feel, where you're going to be moving around as investigators trying to solve this crime. However, one player is playing what's called the Chisel, which is kind of like the DM of the game that's kind of managing it and managing what clues are dealt out to different players, because the players are going to have opportunities to question certain people around the board, and it is up to the Chisel to determine which of the responses is given to that player. Now, it's interesting because if the player thinks that maybe the Chisel didn't give them the best response that they could, or the most helpful response, they have the option to like rough up that person in the game a little bit to try to get more information out of them, which forces the Chisel to potentially, give one of the sides of the card that gives better information. But sometimes there isn't better information. You might be talking to somebody that just doesn't have a lot to tell you. And so there is kind of some risk in choosing to kind of rough up first. You got to kind of choose your moments where you think you could get more information. It's got just a fun dynamic of being more of maybe a role-playing feel, because you're actually moving around with your character, interrogating, getting money, doing all this stuff as you try to solve the crime. And it's just a very great presentation, bursting with theme and really giving that feeling of being a detective. There's also a game mode that allows you to play completely cooperatively if you don't like that idea of someone having to run the chisel. Though it's also nice that while the cases are one-time plays, because once you know the solution, you can replay the cases as the chisel. So you could play a case that you've played before, but introduce it to a new group and run it with that group. So if you're wanting a game that's kind of this mystery crime solving, but has a little bit more game to it, a little bit of role-playing elements, then we would recommend checking out Detective City of Angels.
Like we mentioned, we've got links to all of these games down below if you want to check them out for yourself. And we've got our full playlist of games like videos right here if you want to check out other videos in that series. But either way, we hope to see you in the next one.